In the autumn of 1928, a German Assyriologist named Hartwig Müller catalogued a single-fired clay cylinder pulled from the dust of Tello in what is now southern Iraq. The cylinder measures 14.2 centimeters in height. Müller's field notebook, page 47, records the date of recovery as October 11th, the depth as 3.6 meters, and the inscription as a list of 9, 8 in the common stylus, 1 cut deeper, in a hand the scribe did not use elsewhere. Beneath this entry, in pencil, he wrote a single observation. The 9th is not like the others. Müller died in Berlin on March 14, 1931, of what the death certificate called respiratory failure. He was 34. The last page of his field notebook contains one word, written 9 times. The cylinder was transferred to the British Museum in 1932 and entered the collection under the accession number BM113201. In 1953, the entry was quietly revised. The original card, with Müller's full annotation, was removed from the public register, and the object was reclassified under a subheading reserved for items of uncertain provenance and contested translation. A junior cataloger named Eleanor Whitcomb noticed the discrepancy and wrote a memo to her supervisor in October of that year. The memo survives in the museum's internal archive. In it, Whitcomb observes that the original Müller transcription contains a 9th name which does not appear in the new card, and a marginal note which has been physically excised from the field photograph. Her memo was filed. She was reassigned in January 1954 to a department handling Roman ceramics and never published on the subject again. Access to BM 113201 today requires institutional sponsorship at the level of full professorship. Such requests are routinely denied without explanation. Sumer is the oldest civilization we can read, between roughly 3,500 and 2000 BCE, in the alluvial plain between the Tigris and the Euphrates. A people we call the Sumerians built the first cities, the first irrigation networks, the first written contracts, and the first kings. They divided the day into 24 hours and the hour into 60 minutes, a sexagesimal system we still use because no later culture managed to improve on it. They tracked the planet Venus across an 8-year cycle to a precision modern astronomers find difficult to replicate without optical instruments. They named Sirius as a double star, a fact European science did not confirm until 1862, when Alvin Graham Clark first observed the white dwarf companion now called Sirius B. They knew the precession of the equinoxes, a 25,920-year wobble of Earth's axis that no civilization of their era should have been able to measure within the lifetimes available to them. They wrote, on the Sumerian king list, of 8 kings before the flood, whose combined reigns total 241,200 years. Mainstream history calls this a literary convention. It does not explain why the numbers, when divided by the standard sexagesimal factor of 3,600, produce a sequence consistent with the carbon-14 dating of the earliest settlement layers beneath the temple precinct of Eridu. The cylinder catalogued as BM113201 was found in a sealed chamber beneath the temple of Gursu. The chamber contained no other objects. The floor was swept clean. The cylinder opens with a formula familiar to any reader of Sumerian liturgical text. Anki Bita. It begins. From the joining of heaven and earth, then it diverges. The scribe writes, in a line Müller transcribed and Dr. Marguerite Aubry retranslated in 1971. At the gate of the burning water stand 9 watchers, and the 8th turns away the soul, and the 9th does not turn. Aubry, a Sorbonne linguist who completed her doctoral work on Old Babylonian funerary syntax in 1969, devoted the last 3 years of her life to BM113201. Her 1971 paper, published in a single issue of the Revue d'Assyriologie, before being withdrawn at the request of the editorial board, identifies the 9 names as follows: Ningish Zida, Igalim, Shulshagana, Lugal Namtara, Ningirima, Nungal, Lamashtu, and Dukuga, and in the deeper hand, a 9th, which Aubry could render only phonetically. She wrote it as Tila Amash. She translated it as the one who counts the breath. The first 8 names appear in scattered form across other Sumerian texts. They are minor gods of judgment, plague, and threshold. The ninth name appears nowhere else in the Mesopotamian corpus. Aubrey noted that the ninth was written with a stylus angle 17 degrees offset from the other 8. The deviation is consistent throughout the inscription. The margin of error in her measurement was less than 3%. There are 9. There are not 10. There are not 7. The number is specific. In 1986, Professor Aaron Kestenbaum of the University of Pennsylvania observed that Earth's magnetosphere, as mapped by satellites in the decades following the International Geophysical Year, contains 9 distinct boundary layers between the surface and the heliopause: the troposphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, the exosphere, the inner Van Allen belt, the outer Van Allen belt, the magnetopause, and the heliosheath. The Van Allen belts were not known to exist before 1958. Kestenbaum's monograph, Boundary Cosmology in the Late Uruk Period, noted the correspondence and proposed that the 9 watchers of BM 113201 describe not gods, but transit conditions. That the cylinder is a navigation document. He did not say a navigation document for what. Line 14 of the cylinder gives 3 locations. Miller transliterated them and assumed they were temple sites. Aubrey, applying the Sumerian convention of measuring distance in Beru, roughly 10.8 kilometers, calculated the 3 points relative to the temple of Aninu at Girsu. The first coordinate places a point in the desert west of modern Najaf, at a depth the text gives as 12 times the height of 7 men. The second coordinate points to a location in the eastern Mediterranean, beneath the seafloor, in waters first surveyed by sonar in 1979, the results of which were never publicly released. The third coordinate is not terrestrial. The cylinder gives it as the place where the bull stands without moving, between the chair and the lion. Aubrey, working with the astronomer Dr. Yelena Borisova at Moscow State University in 1983, identified the description as a Lagrange point, specifically the L2 point of the Earth-Sun system, framed at a specific epoch between the constellations Taurus, Cassiopeia, and Leo as seen from Earth. The Lagrange points were not described mathematically until Joseph Louis Lagrange's paper of 1772. The Sumerian cylinder was buried in a sealed chamber before 2100 BCE. Borisova calculated the precession-corrected sky position the cylinder describes. It corresponds to the L2 point as it would have appeared from Girsu. On the morning of an event, the text dates with the line, "In the year the rivers ran with stone, and the sky bled fire for 7 days." The phrase appears in 3 other Mesopotamian sources, 2 of them fragmentary. Aubrey cross-referenced the description with the Greenland Ice Core record, which had been published in summary by 1969. The signature is unmistakable. The cylinder describes the onset of the Younger Dryas, a sudden climatic reversal that began approximately 12,900 years ago, around 10,900 BCE, and ended 1,000 years later with equal abruptness. It is one of the most violent climate events in the human record. It coincides with the extinction of the North American megafauna and the sudden disappearance of the Clovis culture. The cylinder names a date. Aubrey's translation gives it as the 7th day of the cold season, in the year of the white sun. Applying the Sumerian astronomical conventions documented by Kestenbaum, the line corresponds to a calendar date of approximately 10,879 BCE, within a remarkably small margin of the ice core signature. The cylinder was not written in 10,879 BCE. It was written approximately 8,700 years later. The scribe was copying. He was copying from something older. The text contains a number. It appears in line 31. In a passage Aubrey translated as, "When the children of the black-headed people number as the grains of barley in 7 of the great storehouses, the gate will open, and the 9 will count." A great storehouse, in Old Babylonian inventory tablets, holds an attested mean of 1.14 billion grains of barley. 7 storehouses produce a figure of approximately 7.98 billion. Aubrey, in 1971, calculated the trigger at approximately 8 billion souls. She noted the figure was implausible. Global human population in 1971 was 3.8 billion. The United Nations confirmed that global human population crossed 8 billion on November 15, 2022. The margin between the cylinder's prediction and the actual date is less than 3% of the time elapsed since Aubrey made her calculation. The next part of the cylinder is the part Whitcomb's memo identified as missing from the public photograph. The cylinder describes the 9 in physical terms. The descriptions are not metaphorical. They are inventoried. The first is a column of light, narrow as a man, taller than the ziggurat, whose face is the face of a fly and whose voice is the sound of grain pouring into a jar. The second is a wheel within a wheel, edged in eyes that do not blink, whose passing leaves frost on living things. The third wears the skin of 7 men sewn at the seams, and walks on the joints, not the feet. The fourth through eighth follow in similar specificity, heights given in cubits, voices given in animal comparison, weights given by reference to the river they would displace. The descriptions are clinical. The scribe is not afraid. The scribe is taking notes. The ninth is described in a single line. He has no shape. He is the shape the others leave when they stand aside. The cylinder cross-references 12 other cultural traditions by name. The Egyptian duat is named, and the weighing of the heart before its 42 judges is named, though the cylinder predates the earliest layers of the Book of the Dead by several centuries. The Tibetan bardo is named, although the word the scribe uses is not Tibetan. It is a Sumerian construction. The between place, that Aubrey argued is a phonetic ancestor. The Mayan Xibalba is named. Norse Helheim is named. The text claims, in line 47, that the same 9 stand at every threshold, in every land, and the 8th has many names. The trigger conditions are 3. The first is a population of approximately 8 billion. This condition has been met. The second is a celestial alignment. The cylinder specifies it. When the bull stands without moving, between the chair and the lion, and the wandering star of the 7th day rises before the sun in the morning of the cold season. Borisova calculated the alignment. It occurs in the period between November 2024 and February 2027. The window has opened. The third is a magnetic event. The cylinder describes it as the great turning, when the iron in the blood remembers the south and forgets the north. Magnetic field reversals are documented in the geological record. Earth's magnetic field has been weakening at an accelerating rate since 1840. The South Atlantic anomaly, first mapped in detail in 1958, has expanded by approximately 7% per decade since. When the 3 conditions are met, the cylinder says, 3 things will happen. The gate will open. The 9 will appear at the threshold of every dying body, in every land, at the same hour, and 8 of them will count. The 9th will choose. The final line of the cylinder, in Aubrey's translation, is 4 words. 8 will name you. 1 will know your name. The chamber was sealed. The floor was swept clean. In 1992, Dr. Theodor Hallberg of Uppsala University published a careful and methodical rebuttal of the Aubrey-Kestenbaum-Borisova reading. He argued that the 9 names are conventional funerary deities, that the coordinates are textual ornament typical of late Lagash liturgy, that the population figure is a coincidence of round numbers common to ancient literature, and that the Younger Dryas correlation is a post hoc reading made possible only by the ice core data Aubrey had access to in 1969. Hallberg's paper is careful and rigorous. It does not explain why the cylinder names the Egyptian duat by a phonetic rendering that predates the Egyptian source, and it does not explain the population figure, a specific number, written in a specific notation, in a tablet sealed in a chamber more than 4,000 years ago. There are 3 ways to read BM 113201. The first is that it is a coincidence, that the Sumerians, like any sufficiently literate culture, produced enough text that some of it would, by chance, align with later science. The second is that it is the surviving copy of a document from an earlier, lost civilization, one that ended in the climatic catastrophe of the Younger Dryas, and that preserved enough knowledge in fired clay to reach across the gap. The third is that the cylinder is exactly what it says it is. The object sits today in storage room C14 of the British Museum, in a climate-controlled case at the back of a shelf, behind a row of unprovenance Lagash fragments. It is 14.2 centimeters tall. Its trigger number is approximately 8 billion. The alignment window opened in November 2024. The magnetic field continues to weaken. The 9th name is in size 17 degrees off from the other 8. 8 will name you. 1 will know your name. The scribe did not say which one.